Yes, we are live.
Okay, fantastic. Hello, all, and welcome to another Kilter Club event. And this time we are all going to get really cheesy, and we'll be talking about cheese and especially a specific kind of cheese, camel cheese, and how what it can mean for India and for Rajasthan and places like that. We've got Mansi, we've got Elizabeth, and we've got Elsa. We'll be talking a lot of things, so join in. Mansi, why don't you take over? Do you want to?
Sure. Hi everyone. This is Mansi here from the Cheese Collective. Of course, if you guys are talking about cheese, I was most excited to be a part of this. So thank you so much for having me, you guys. Um, Elizabeth and I connected, of course, over cheese, and we took it from there. And we have an amazing map that we want to share with you guys. Imagine an entire map of India with a plotting of every cheesemaker, every cheese, cheese retailer. Oh, there it is. Can you guys see it?
Yes, we can.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yep.
So, I mean, just look at that. That's us. That's us. That's Indians who are making cheese, who are selling cheese, and some of them are as new as a few months old, and some of them are, they started a couple of decades ago. So there's a lot of history on this map, and of course there are a lot of cheeses that have been there with us since not just decades, but they've been there. They're prehistoric indigenous Indian cheeses. So we have a good mix of everything. We got together, we spoke to a bunch of people, we interviewed them, and we have collated all that information. And I'm going to now, I'm going to let Elizabeth introduce you to a little bit about what Food Forward India does, and how this map, this Google Earth, actually works. And yes, Elizabeth, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Really great to be here and be here with you all to talk about this project that we did together with Mansi. So I'm Elizabeth, and I am the assistant project manager at Food Forward India. And so, Food Forward India is an initiative that's exploring and discovering food around India. And the main aim of what we do is basically we want to kind of broaden the narrative and from the current stereotypes that we have that is called like Indian food. And our main work actually was supposed to be traveling around, lots of field work, visiting different people in different places, and learning about I'm saying cheese, but learning about cultures and traditions across India. But obviously, the pandemic happened, and our explorations all became virtual. And so we decided to meet people, see if we can meet people virtually, understand their homes through a series that we call the Virtual Escapes that you can find on our Instagram, and also put it into a digital media where we have our website launching soon, which would enable people to, which would be an interactive space for people to kind of explore this journey of food with us. So how, what, and why, and how did we get to cheese? Well, nothing gets cheddar than this. I was told to use as many cheese puns as possible. So cheese is actually may not be like the first thing we think about when we hear Indian food. So maybe Amul cheese and maybe paneer, but that list actually kind of stops there. But having a really rich culinary landscape that we do with our climatic zones that are similar to Europe, so many pastoralist communities that out of necessity preserve food in all forms. So factors like these obviously are bound, uh, for us to create some of these delicious products from dairy. Going way back, like Mansi said, to the Indus Valley civilization. I think, cultured butter, cultured ghee way before the Europeans cultured butter. And so our curiosities led us to curating this modern timeline of cheese with Mansi from the Cheese Collective, that represents people, producers, and communities who've kind of brought to life recognition of Indian and indigenous cheese. So why was this kind of like important for us to do? Well, it was important for us to do because, as I said before, like the main aim of Food Forward India is to break these stereotypes of Indian cuisine and add more like um, com- complexity to the narrative of food. And cheese was one ingredient. Like, you're going to hear Dr. Rolifson, whose story and journey is absolutely lovely and amazing. And it shows us how this one ingredient can showcase the diversity of products and techniques through the communities they represent. And we're able to see people, places, hear their stories. And this opens our mind to food culture and creates a kind of sense of inclusivity in these dialogues. And so the first step for us was obviously to find a collaborator. So we reached out to the wonderful Mansi Jasani, who is doing. She's like the cheese queen, with all of her with her curation of cheese, her collective, and also and also her vast knowledge of cheese. So it was very exciting to learn that Mansi co-authored the chapter in the Oxford Companion to Cheese on India, and this is again another culinary landmark. And so together we called all curd nerds, and we asked them about these different like significant memories that they had about cheese. What did cheese mean to them in their communities? What was their cheese origin story? When did this cheese origin story begin, and how did they start, and what were their aha moments as they went through cheese? So we didn't just want to share these stories randomly, but we wanted to create a way that if you were new to Indian cheese, you could maybe chronologically go along this timeline to learn more about how these different cheesemakers kind of came into place. We started, as we called it, a modern timeline. So we started at Operation Flood, um, which was around the time of the White Revolution, which cheese dairy processing really took off in India because of the excess milk supply. And so we tried to create and add in cheesemakers as they started their journey, and learn of their stories. And so I'm really excited today to be here because of also two people who really like brought together this journey for us. Obviously Mansi, who we collaborated with to make this possible, and Dr. Rolifson, who I said again, whose story really inspired us and helped us think so much more outside of the box of what cheese was within the community. And so with that, I mean, I hand over to you, Dr. Rolifson. I have a small introduction which I'd like to share. So Dr. Rolifson is a scientist who is known for championing pastoralism, and she found the Raika people whose way of life was under threat because of their dependence on camels, and she decided to help. And this beautiful journey of hers lands us what we're talking about today, which is cheese, and how she's using cheese as a tool to kind of bring back, revive this. Revive the camel population and save the camels and the culture of the people in Rajasthan, in the Raika community. So over to you, Dr. Rolifson.
Oh, thank you very much. Good evening. It's wonderful to be here and to share, yes, the potential of camel cheese. It's not an exaggeration. I'm getting more and more convinced that the cheese is actually the solution to save the camels of Rajasthan. And I'll going to start with a short movie that gives you the background of, but where is it now? I wanted to show you a little movie. 1 minute. That gives you the background of Can you see it? Hello?
Not as yet.
No, we can't.
You'll have to share your screen, Dr. Olafsen.
Yeah, okay, 1 minute. I think I made a mistake. Where's the Zoom? Okay, I need to Bildschirm freigeben. Somehow I can't see the move when I start to. Okay, I can't find it. Sorry, it's.
Do you see a share screen?
Yeah, no, I'm on the share screen, but when I share the screen, it doesn't. Like it's not to share. It's not on the. It's not there. That's too bad. Then I'll just have to tell you the story. Okay, so so the background is that I came here almost 30 years ago to study camels, and I came across the Rika community. At that time, they were not known, but they totally fascinated me as a veterinary doctor with a love for camels, because they had such an intimate relationship with their camels. Like they were never using them for meat. They weren't selling the milk. They were basically just breeding male camels to sell them at the Pushkar fair as transport animals. And they have this really, this close relationship, and they talk to their camels, and they can control, a single person can control about 50 camels, and they listen to the commands, and they are very, very friendly. These camels, if you stand among them, they come and they kiss you, basically, if they're well-treated camels. So I was totally fascinated at the time, but I was also exposed to a lot of the problems. They were telling me our camels are dying, and there's no grazing areas for them, and there's a disease, and can you help us? So this actually kind of changed me from an academic to more like an activist, and I started an NGO to support the Rika and to support pastoralists in general. So for a long time, we were just, providing camel health care. We were fighting with the foresters for access to grazing in the forest, and all these things, but it didn't really help at all. Then in the early 2000s, camels were actually begun to be slaughtered. It was something that wasn't talked about because it went totally against the ethics of the Rika community, but still they were sold at Pushkar, and then from there they went to Hyderabad and different places, and they were used for meat, but it was something nobody talked about. So the camel population went down, not because of the slaughter actually, but because there wasn't enough grazing grounds for the camels. The young people didn't want to breed camels because there was no income. And then when the Rajasthan government finally found out about this, the chief minister, she actually said we have to do something, and she declared the camel state animal. And this was in 2014, and we thought now the camel is going to be helped, and there's going to be special programs to support the camel breeders and so on. But that's actually not what happened. What happened was that a law was put into place that stopped, that made it illegal to take camels out of Rajasthan, and almost everything was forbidden that you can do with camels. You weren't allowed to castrate them. You couldn't put a nose peg in their nose. All kinds of things were prohibited. And this was really, unfortunately, the kind of the death knell for the camel, because early on the Rika had made all their income once a year at Pushkar, where they were selling the female camels, where they were selling the male camels. And suddenly, so this market kind of totally fell apart. The buyers weren't coming anymore because they couldn't take the camels out of Rajasthan legally. And so since 2014-15, the situation has really gone very bad. So the only way of actually you know, if you want to save the camel, if you want to save the culture, the people need to be in a position to make a living from keeping camels. So we started different things. We made a little factory to make camel poo paper. We set up a wool unit to process the camel wool. But the big potential really is in the camel milk. Here in India, there's actually no tradition of drinking camel milk. And I mean, for 20 years, I listened to people saying camel milk is disgusting, ooh, it's inedible, etc. But then actually things changed because it became known that a lot of autistic children respond really well to camel milk. And an American mother of an autistic child, she's actually written a book about this. So this kind of filtered through to India, and we were getting requests from parents of autistic children to send them camel milk. So we set up this dairy, India's first camel dairy, the Kumbhalghat camel dairy, where we can process about 200 liters of milk per day. And what we do is we pasteurize the milk, we put it into small bottles, 200 ml, and then we deep freeze it, and then we send it in ice boxes direct to the end consumer, by bus usually. And so this has been going on, but it's actually a very difficult business because the infrastructure in India is just not there, and the logistics are really difficult. So it's very expensive. It makes the milk very expensive for the consumer, and for us, it's almost impossible to make a profit. But the good thing is that earlier, it was also thought one cannot make cheese from camel milk. The camel milk is actually very different from cow's milk. In a way, it's much better. It has different proteins than camel milk, than cow's milk. It has very high iron content, 10 times as much as cow's milk. It has various proteins in it that raise your body's immune system, but it doesn't curdle. You can't make curd from it, and you couldn't make cheese from it. But fortunately for us, a Danish company about 8 years ago or so, they developed a special enzyme, a special rennet, with which you can curdle the camel milk. And this rennet was actually first experimented with in Kenya for African pastoralists. So when we heard that, you know, it is now possible to make camel milk, we actually managed to get two cheese experts to us, one from Austria and a lady from Denmark who's been living in Kenya, and she's the one who tried out making cheese from camel milk among the nomads in Kenya. So they both came over here several times, and we've been working on developing cheeses, and it's been very successful. The cheese is absolutely delicious. It doesn't need much of a cool chain. In fact, we've made one kind of cheese, feta cheese, and it's conserved in oil, and it doesn't need a refrigerator at all. You can keep it for months. No refrigeration necessary. It's absolutely delicious. So now the interest is really increasing in camel cheese, and I just wish I could let you taste some. I'm just going to show you what we have. We have 3 kinds of cream cheese. We have red pepper, green pepper, and we have black pepper, and we have, and this is our feta cheese in oil and with spices, with Mediterranean spices, garlic, rosemary, thyme, in olive oil or in mustard oil. And yes, I just wish I could let you try the cheese, but unfortunately I can't. But the interesting thing about the cheese is that it probably, because it's not processed at a high temperature, it's processed at 40 degrees, 50 degrees, which is less than the temperature we use for pasteurization. So it means all the good, the healing components of the camel milk, they are retained in the cheese. And we haven't made any experiments yet, but I believe the autistic children, they might respond very well to the camel cheese as well. So we're trying to build it up as a, also, I mean, apart from the medicinal value, we also want to make it like Rajasthan's heritage health food. And we're gaining momentum, and I can see something really great happening here. Sorry, any questions?
Thank you so much, Dr. Rollison. I have one. I mean, you were talking about how camel cheese is kind of, people know about it now. People are talking about it now even more. And but you also see one big flaw in the system in terms of logistics and supply chain and things, kind of actually market linkages per se. Could you tell us a little bit about that as well?
So actually, with the cheese, I think the logistics are not by far not as difficult as with the milk. And at the moment, we get orders. People are giving us orders now. They're ordering it as for Diwali gifts. Actually, we've had big orders, and so at the moment we are still, need to develop our capacity. Actually, I don't think we're ready for supermarkets yet. We tried that with the milk, and that was, we've pulled out of that because we don't have the resources. But we also have limited cheese making facilities at the moment. One needs a lot of milk. Actually, out of 1 liter of milk, you get only a tenth of that is going to be cheese. So for a kilo of cheese, we need about 10 liters of milk. But now I'm seeing the response, and so I think we're going to invest in increasing our cheese making facilities. And yeah.
That's really wonderful to hear. I hope to get some in Bangalore soon.
So yes, soon you'll have it. I mean, I was trying to show. I could show you the. How does it work?
Amazing.
So this is the black pepper. This is the red. That is green pepper, and then we have here. We have the red pepper, and this one, the yellow one. Indians love the yellow one because it's with turmeric and some archwine and garlic. I think it's going to be a real health enhancer, that one. So, and apart from that, we are also working on a sweet concoction made from milk and honey. So things are in process. Yes.
Lovely. Dr. Rollison, we have one question about the rennet and why it's why it's special and what helps it make the cheese better. Maybe you could tell us also a little bit about why we can't just use any like rennet to curdle. Why is it this special kind of rennet that's needed to be used?
Somehow it's the proteins in the camel milk which are different, and which is why it doesn't curdle. So this rennet that comes from Denmark, it's the rennet originally it came from the calf stomach. Obviously, this is not the case here. I mean, I think this is made. It's an artificial rennet or something like a rennet. Yeah. Mm. So it's a Danish company called CHR Hansen, and they actually have been supporting us a lot. They've been giving us the rennet, not just the rennet, but also various cultures for free. And yeah, they've been very supportive of us. So I cannot exactly tell you, it's something to do with the molecule structures of the proteins, why the camel milk doesn't curdle.
Mm. That's really interesting. I have another question about like how do the Raika community feel about making cheese? Because it's not something that is done, say, traditionally, and this is a new product and a new process. So I'm very curious to know more about know more about their reactions to this as well.
Yeah, she said they're actually not at all no familiar with the concept of cheese. And we just had a meeting last week, and where camel breeders from all over Rajasthan came. You know, they're very upset because the Pushkar Camel Fair, it has been cancelled. So they're actually writing a petition to the government for, you know, various interventions. So they all came here, and I had prepared a plate of these cheese balls, and they all said, "Oh, laddu." No? Then they were disappointed because, you know, they tasted of garlic and green pepper instead of being sweet. So yeah, but actually the turmeric variety, the one, it's like a young Raika boy. He has a very good palate, so he helped develop it. And yeah, I mean, personally, I was initially going more like for Mediterranean kind of flavor, but obviously for the Indian palate, we have to do different.
That is really interesting. And I also liked when we were chatting earlier, you told us about how a lot of hotels in the area and chefs and restaurateurs are starting to experiment with camel cheese as well.
Yeah, yes. I'm sure it's, yeah, at the moment it's not a good time for that, but it will come back, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, yeah, too bad I can't show you that film.
Do you want to maybe send it across and I can maybe see if
You
I
know,
can share it, and then we can come back after we chat with Mansi.
okay, fine. Yeah, maybe I can work it out in the meantime. Yeah. Okay, sure. Yeah.
So Mansi, over to you now that we've heard this
Okay,
really
firstly,
lovely story.
that was just fascinating and amazing, and I'm so happy to finally meet you after all the conversations earlier, and I am super impressed by your story and the amount of amazing work that you've done, and I can't wait to try the camel cheese as well.
You love it.
Love it. Seriously love it. Love that passion. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit about my journey as well. It's not as fascinating and inspiring, but I'm trying to do a little bit whatever I can for cheese and India. So we started the cheese. I started the Cheese Collective back in 2013, but my cheese journey kind of began when I used to work and volunteer at a cheese store in New York called Murray's. And ultimately, I did a cheese boot camp there, which was 65 cheeses, 3 days, morning to evening, eating cheese, talking about it, and just totally immersive cheese experience. And after those 3 days, everyone around me were cheesed out, but I could eat more cheese. And that's when I knew that this is what I love and this is what I need to be doing. And I moved back to India and started the Cheese Collective. We're making fresh cheese, fresh cream cheese, fresh goat cheese, and we curate cheese from cheesemakers across the country, as well as certain imported cheeses, but with a focus on indigenous Indian cheese and, you know, cheeses like this special camel cheese, trying to help communities as well as, you know, try and make all the customers happy as well. And you're right, Indian palates are quite different. They want that spice and kick, and garlic is definitely a crowd favorite. But moving on to this, also I wanted to really thank Elizabeth again. What that whole cheese timeline and map uh, is just something super special. I really want you guys to check it out. And so yeah, this is us today. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the cheese families. Um, just, you know, when we think of cheese, we know that milk is the most important ingredient. The most important ingredient, like if there isn't good milk, you cannot make good cheese. You may have the best recipe in the world, but you cannot make a good cheese. The milk has to be good, clean, ethically sourced, and it's so important what the cattle is eating as well. Cheese is like a time capsule. What you're eating today, especially if it's an aged cheese, is a captured moment of a time of what the cattle ate, what the grass was, what the soil is, what the flowers that are grown are. All of that goes, all that goodness goes into the milk, and that is translated into the cheese. That is what natural artisanal cheese is all about. And one of my favorite quotes that is out here: cheese is milk's leap towards immortality. And it kind of plays on that whole time capsule thing. Can we go to the next slide? This is just a little quick overview about, you can just like glance through the ingredients and see how a natural cheese is just basic milk, cultures, rennet or enzymes, and salt. And look at the beautiful shapes and textures and colors just these four ingredients can give you. And when we come to processed cheese, it's got some percentage of cheese, but it also has a lot of other ingredients that are added to it. And the result is something that is very homogeneous, but it's also in the taste family. You will have, it'll be buttery, it'll be creamy, and it'll be salty, but it won't have any of those undertones of the varied tastes that you get. And all those tastes are a lot to do with the milk and the cultures that we use. So none of that translates through processed cheese, which is very standardized. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you so much, Elizabeth, by the way, for doing this. Thank you for helping me with the slides. Okay, so these are a couple of ways to segregate or categorize cheeses. We have the first one, which is according to the milk. So we have a beautiful example of camel milk. And there's also, donkey, moose, and yak, which are some of the other harder milks to access. In fact, the tennis player Djokovic, for one of the years, I think it was 2014 or 15. So for that year, he bought the entire donkey milk cheese of like, there were 2 production units, and he bought all that donkey milk cheese because he wanted to have the most expensive cheese at his restaurant. And why is it expensive? Is because you need a lot of milk to make that cheese. That's one of the reasons. And plus the process is much harder than cow or goat or sheep or buffalo. So that's why these are all the varieties of milk. That's one way to categorize them. The other one is the kind of milk that you use, whether it's pasteurized, whether it's ultra pasteurized, whether it's homogenized, or it's raw. Raw milk makes the best cheese. Then there's rennet. There are different types of rennet and different methods of setting the cheese. I'm going to go a little quick because I have a lot to share with you guys. Then there's the method of making. We're going to get a little bit into that in the next few slides, and where it comes from and what it looks like and what the texture is. Those are some of the categories. Let's start with the fresh category. So when we say fresh, the word fresh, especially in our country, in India, there's always this we always associate the word fresh with stale. So, the food is fresh or it's gone stale. But in the cheese community, when we say it's a fresh cheese, what we're trying to say is it's a cheese that is young, a cheese that is made and immediately eaten. It's best eaten when it's immediately, right after it's made. And it doesn't have a rind. A rind is an outer layer or a protective layer. We will get to different kinds of rinds in the other slides. But this, you have to just keep in mind, a fresh cheese is a cheese that is young, it is unripened, it's not aged, and it's fresh because it's just eaten pretty much like mozzarella. You eat it immediately. Then there is a fresh goat cheese, a cream cheese. even feta, it's a young, even burrata. So all these cheeses, even though they last for anything from a day to 2 days to 2 weeks, they all fall under the fresh cheese category. And it's best to store them in the dairy compartment where it's cold in the fridge. That's one of the tips to storing them. Okay, next. This is a Bloomy cheese, Bloomy rind cheese. This is one of my favorite categories as well. So if you have ever tried or eaten a brie or a camembert or a robiola, these are all Bloomy rind cheeses. When I say Bloomy, it's because when the cheese is made and it is young, and then it goes into the aging room, and the aging room is where it is an environment which is temperature and humidity controlled. So the cheese sits there and it ages for a couple of weeks, depending on how long you want to age. Each cheese has a different condition and protocol. So this one, say it's for a couple of weeks. When it's made, it's quite bare. And then over the few weeks, there's a nice white rind that sort of blooms all over and around the cheese. And essentially you're supposed to pat it down, flip it, rotate it, and all of that. Those are the care that you give to the Bloomy rind cheeses. So the rind is essentially blooming. When you feel it, it feels very soft and velvety. And that's like an example of a rind that has bloomed and you've patted down. Brie, camembert, robiola, humble fog is this American cheese that also falls in the same category. So that's why these are Bloomy rind cheeses. The rind is edible in this category. Now we go into the washed rind. Here, the rind, you can see the earlier one was white, pretty much snowy, velvety white. This one is a little bit crustier. It is got this orange and reddish kind of a hue, kind of a color. And this is because of certain bacteria. So also all of this is a lot to do with the bacteria. Sorry, I forgot to tell you guys. I'm just so excited to share with you. So the Bloomy rind cheese is a penicillium called Penicillium candidum, Penicillium camemberti. And that's where camembert gets its name from. And here it's the B linens, Brevibacterium linen, and that gives it this kind of crust and protective layer. So the Epoise, which is a French cheese, is also sometimes washed with apple brandy. So you're washing the rind with a brine, with a solution. It can be water-based, it can be a little bit of alcohol or another special mix. So the rind is washed regularly, whether it is patted for these kind of softer cheeses, or if it's a bit of a harder washed rind or smear ripened, where the rind is, smeared essentially. So these are just some key words, technical words that I use to categorize these cheese families. So yeah, these are the stinky cheeses as well. They're known as the stinky cheeses. In fact, if one of these cheeses, if you plot the smell graph and you compare that smell graph to cat's urine or smelly feet, it's gonna be pretty similar. So that's kind of how stinky they are, but they don't taste as stinky. So they're super delicious. Next. Can we go to the next one? Oh, perfect. Yeah. So this one is the semi-hard cheese category. These also have a rind, but in this case, if you notice with the Emmental and the Gouda or the Gouda, it's quite waxy. So what happens is they make the entire wheel, and then that wheel is dipped into hot wax, whether it's red or black, sometimes green, depending. So you dip it into that wax and you remove it, and then it's a protective layer. So it's not a natural layer, of course, because you're adding that layer with wax, but it helps protect what's inside. And this one isn't edible. I want to talk to you a little bit about these holes that are there in the Emmental. The Emmental is the most iconic cheese that ever is. It's also known as the Tom and Jerry cheese. And it's also whenever we see like whether it's even like a cartoon image of cheese or a GIF or any image that is illustrated, usually you'll always have this cheese, a one with holes. Now these holes in cheese is caused by the gas formation. So when cheese is aging, there's gases that are released and it needs to escape. So that's where these holes are formed, and they're actually known as eyes. So they're the eyes of cheese. So the technical term for it is eyes. It's just something for you to remember. And this is the semi. So now we go on to the hard cheese category. Now, all those other cheeses that we saw, the fresh one was a few weeks to couple of days old. Then we had the Bloomy rind, which was a couple of weeks old. The semi-hard or the pliable. Sorry, was that someone? Sorry. Okay. So then we had the semi-hard cheeses that were, that can be a couple of months to even a year or 2 years old. But the hard cheeses are aged for much longer, from a year to 2 to even 4 years. Like, for example, this Gouda. So we had a young Gouda, which was the previous one, and we have this aged Gouda. And if we can just flip back to the previous slide, we can see the color of these cheeses versus the next one. You can see it's developed much more. It's much deeper. That was more of a straw yellow. This one's more of a deeper yellow. So with aging of a cow milk cheese, this is what the color difference has. Each milk has a different kind of color. Usually, like goat and buffalo is pretty much stark white when it is young, and when it ages, it has this grayish kind of tinge to it as well. It'll be very interesting to know. I would love to know what would happen with with the camel milk. I am not sure about that. I'll ask that to you later. But coming back to the hard cheese, these cheeses have the least amount of whey or water content because they're aged for so long, and the way they're made as well. So it's just it's just common sense, because it will last longer because it has less water content in it, and the fresh cheese category has the most water in it. So it needs to be consumed ASAP. Another fun fact about Parmigiano Reggiano, which is also known as the king of all cheeses, is there are certain there used to be a time where people could take a loan against it because it was considered so valuable. So that's a fun little fact about it. And you can see the texture, you can see the crystals that have formed. That is also, so all part of the aging process. Both these cheeses have these white spots on it, and all of that is some sort of acid formation. So you know that this is an aged cheese. That's a sign of an aged cheese. You get that slight crunch as well. Now we'll move on to the last family. Another favorite. You can just see how beautiful the color is. It's again like a pale yellow with a strong river of blue and green and gray. Of course, when you see it much closer, like when you see a close up, it's even more beautiful. So I want to tell you a little bit about the blue cheese of cheese, blue family of cheeses. This one is called Blue di Bufala, and the other one is the Gorgonzola. And the blue di Bufala is a blue cheese made of buffalo milk, so it's really filled with a lot of fat and quite delicious. Now I want you guys to look at the holes that are there on the side of the cheese. So again, when the cheese is made, this one, and any of the blue cheeses, basically, when the blue cheese is made, there is, for example, if it's a cylindrical shape or, a rectangle, it's kept in it's young, it's got no rind yet, developed any rind yet, and it's kept in the aging room to age gracefully. And after a certain time, there are needles or steel needles that are inserted into the cheese and then removed. And what you're left with are these holes. And what happens is with the holes, there's oxygen that enters these cheese. So what you're left with is the bacteria, which is the penicillin roqueforti. That's one of the bacterias. They have they have the perfect atmosphere, the temperature is perfect, the humidity is great, and they have oxygen now. So they're having a party, they're multiplying like crazy, and that's where all these beautiful veins are developing. So that's the that's the blue cheese category. It's sharp, it's piquant. Piquant means it's got a little spice to it, not chili spice, but just a general piquant spiciness to it. But it's also buttery and salty. So it's a beautiful taste profile that is very underrated in India at the moment. So all these cheeses are one of the ways to categorize them, and you can call them cheese families. I just wanted to show you a little bit about. Sorry, give me good. Yeah, so I just wanted to show you a little bit about some of the platters that we make. Especially this one is all the products and the cheeses on this platter, the bigger one, the one with the apples, is all Indian cheese. In fact, all these cheeses, we were actually doing a special class with a local Bombay cheesemaker called Mosam of Elethria cheese. So we were doing a cheese tasting of that. So it's just awesome as a cheesemonger and as a cheesemaker, I feel happy and proud that there are so many cheesemakers now in the country doing such amazing work. And to showcase that and to present that in a good way, in a beautiful way, and to give it to the customers and showcase it in this manner is what makes me happiest. So just wanted to share that with you guys as well. And yes, this one is a beautiful display of all the beautiful cheeses of India. In fact, I want your eyes to go to the left and bottommost cheese. There are four to five cheeses there, these cheese balls. Yeah, perfect. So those are Bandel, and it's an indigenous Indian cheese. And it is smoky and salty. It's from the Bengal region of India. And we have had this cheese from back when the Portuguese kind of introduced that method of cheese making to us, and used to be made in the Bandel region of India, but now it's closer to Kolkata. But it's a gorgeous cheese. It's technically a dairy product because of the method of making, but we can include it in the cheese category as well. And then I want your eyes to go to another beautiful cheese. It's right to the left of the mini flower. It's a white cheese and it's round. It's called Kalari. It's in its own brown. Yeah, perfect. Yes. So that one is Kalari. Again, super special. Kalari is very popular in Jammu Kashmir. It's a northern cheese. It's been made since centuries, and it's literally called doodh roti, and it is made when we flip a roti or a paratha, or even in Gujarati we have a bajranu rotla. So all of that is flipped with that hand action. And that is also how this kalari is made. And the way we eat it is you eat it in its own fat. So you just fry it in its own, shallow fry it in its own fat, and best enjoy it with a local drink. So those are two very special cheeses, and every other cheese on this in front of you is made in India. And some are made as recent as a few years, some are made since many years. We have stuff from Kashmir, we have from Bengal, we have from Uttarakhand, we don't have something from the farm in Chennai, but they make fantastic cheeses as well. And we have stuff from Bombay. So there's a plethora of cheeses, and there's still many more yet to be discovered. There's many more that yet need to be documented. And slowly but surely, Elizabeth and I are going to do it with your help. If you ever come across anything, please reach out to us as well. So yeah, this is a little bit what I wanted to share with you. I hope you guys liked it.
Thanks so much, Mansi. That was such a great, like, broad introduction to all things cheese. And obviously, we can talk about like these different types forever. But there are some exciting questions for you. So, one from Nadika. Sorry, not from one about one asking, are there any safety issues with making cheese from unpasteurized milk?
Yeah, no, definitely, Pranavi. So it's especially in our country. So let me retrace. So raw milk cheese is the best kind of cheese that you can do, and I told you the reason why, because that cheese has all that raw milk has all the goodness of what the cattle has had, and it's in its most natural state. And of course, when I'm talking about raw milk, it has to be of cattle that has been taken care of, is also it's ethically been milked, it is hormone free, it is not injected with a million things. So everything, the food that the cattle eats and then which translates into the raw milk, makes it beautiful and powerful. So that translates into the best kind of cheese. Example, Parmigiano Reggiano. Now, with India and our climate and our infrastructure and logistics, it can be very difficult. So, if a person has access to a dairy farm, for example, if you have your own farm or you have access to it, and you build a facility or you have a cheese room on those premises, and you immediately use that raw milk to make cheese, it's known as farmstead cheese. And that is going to be, and of course you make sure the controls and the hazard controls and all of that is taken care of, then it is a beautiful and good and safe cheese to eat. But otherwise, it can get tricky, because milk itself is so fragile. You leave it out for a few hours, and the bacteria have multiplied, because they're feeding on the sugars in the milk, so they are going to multiply. So if all safety measures are taken care of, and if you have a cheese facility or a room right next to it, or you have access to you have a proper cold chain access and assured access of raw milk, then you can safely make raw milk cheese. Otherwise, I guess pasteurized is fine, but you don't want to ultra pasteurize it and kill everything. You don't want to kill the good and the bad. Then what you're left with is just a white liquid. None of that goodness.
Yeah.
There,
None of that flavor and deliciousness.
None of that is there.
So talking about like microorganisms and safety and things like that, we have another question from Pranavi asking, how do you make sure only a specific organism like the Roquefort infects the blue cheese?
I mean, some of these recipes are age old, so for us, they've actually made it easier for us. We know which culture is affecting the milk in a certain way when you have the certain right temperatures, and then in the aging room you have the specific temperature and humidity. So it's kind of like the recipe is already there for us. They've done the math, they've done the chemistry for us, but it's always fun to see how when you use maybe two cultures and mix it and come up with a new cheese. There's in fact a brie that is made using the penicillin camembert and penicillin roquefort. So it's called it's a blue brie. Essentially, it's a blue cheese and it's a brie. Which has a bloomy rind. So there are pathways laid out for us if we want to make those cheeses. But I feel, honestly, our milk is different, our cultures are different, our ambient cultures are different. So no matter what we make, it is going to be a new and different cheese. And you can totally experiment. I'm sorry,
That-
did I answer the question or?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
definitely.
Yeah.
Uh, I was wondering if we could also hear a little bit. I think I saw your post a couple of days ago talking about how the farm in Chennai officially has like the first was it washed
Right.
rind cheese. So coming to that, Pranavi asked, why do we wash the rind? Why do we wash the rind in a washed
I
rind
think
cheese? And
that's a good question. That's a
maybe
really
you
good
can also
question.
tell us a bit about how the farm has the first washed rind cheese in India.
I need to tell you about the farm in Chennai. They started in 1977, I believe, and I will check that. But they started many years ago, and they started as a dairy, and they now make some of the best cheese in the country. They have, again, they're farmstead, so they have access to amazing milk, and they have worked very hard, and they are churning out some brilliant cheeses. One of their latest ones is called Piccolo, which means little, and it's the size. It's a small round that fits in your palm, and it's, I believe, India's first washed rind cheese. And coming to the question of why they are washed, so like I said, each rind it is formed as a security, as a protective layer to protect what's inside, which is what we want. It's kind of like how a fruit has a skin, and it's kind of protecting what's inside, right? So a lot of these rinds are naturally, I'm sorry for that. That's my laptop. So a lot of these rinds are formed naturally, and we need to maintain it. The idea is, when you're making cheese, it is the controlled spoilage of milk. We have spoiled the milk, just technical terms. We have split it essentially. And at each and every step, till the cheese is ready, we are controlling every step. So when we are giving the bacteria a free hand to develop into a rind or develop those veins, but we have to make sure, like, we're not, like those holes that you saw on the blue cheese, they're tiny. They're not big gaping holes. You want to give them oxygen, but you don't want them you want to control the amount that goes in. So same way in any of these washed rind cheeses, you or the Bloomy rinds, you're patting it periodically, you're flipping it so that every surface gets exposed, every surface gets patted down. There are certain cheeses that even develop mucor, which is cat's whiskers, which it's called, and you have to pinch it and remove it. So there are these hair, tiny hair, whisker hair like bacteria that develop. It's quite
Wow.
fun. And in America, when I was taking care of those cheeses, I removed them. In France, when I went to learn more about it, they patted it down. So different countries also have different ways of taking care of the same type of cheese as well. And you want to, for some of these harder cheeses and the wash rind cheeses, you don't want the rind to split or crack. So that's why you periodically wash them, keep them moist, because they are in that room where they can dry out. So yeah, that's the reason.
I think that's really fascinating, and also
They're
as you
like,
were
they're like
talking,
little babies. You have to take care of them. If they want
and they're so different. Yeah, and they're so different from each other, right? I mean, they're like each little children of their own.
each one has their own tantrums, and each one has their own care protocol.
Yeah. And coming to that, like, so like when we say paneer, or when we say
Yeah.
chena, ricotta, even though they might have, even within paneer there are so many different processes, they are similar. Yeah, they are similar, but they're different. Could you talk about maybe these cheeses that we have? Also, we have a question from Kunal who asks about
Yes.
Shrikhand. Since it's made from hung curd, is it also similar to cheese?
So it would fall under a dairy product, because with cheese there has to be some sort of fermentation that takes place. So technically, the curd is fermented to make it a curd, So there's a little bit of a gray line, in my opinion, but I would put Shrikhand as a dairy product.
Mm. And what about like the other fresh cheeses that we have, like chena, paneer, ricotta? Um, how like
Ricotta would be ricotta means recooked. So when harder cheese is made, the leftover whey is reheated, and once they reheat it to that temperature, the high temperature, automatically there is a splitting of and then you put some sort of acid, optionally. Then the whey splits, and there are leftover solids in the whey that gather together, and then you drain that, and then that is ricotta. So that's actual ricotta. But there are versions that are being made, which are known as whole milk ricotta, where whole milk is split, and it's very similar in that sense to the new age paneer, which is split with an acid, with lemon or vinegar. But traditionally, paneer is made with buttermilk, using buttermilk to split the milk.
I think Aditya Raghavan writes a really lovely article about that, and
Do a session on Indian dairy and the science behind it. I will sell the stuff.
it also we've put it on our timeline as well, because it's such a important part of the whole conversation around cheese. Speaking about like cultures as well, are there any Indian cheese cultures that are kind of being developed right now for specific kinds of Indian cheese?
That's really interesting. I had been reading up on that lately about are there Indian, because it totally makes sense, because we have our own I mean, each region has their own flora, fauna, and different environment. So it does make sense, and there are certain articles which I will share with you all on. There are articles in scientific journals that are talking about Indian specific cultures, but how widely they are used in cheese making, I don't think so. Not at the moment. At least not in artisanal cheese making. But that would be really cool. It's also the trend in the cheese making world. Not a trend. Uh, it's not a trend, but it's something that is talked about a lot, especially last year at the American Cheese Conference that I went for. We were talking about natural cultures and not using cultures from companies, but developing your own cultures. That is what the traditional cheesemakers across the world do, and sort of trying to encourage cheesemakers and younger cheesemakers to make your own cultures, uh, which is similar to what we spoke about in terms of is there an Indian culture.
Super interesting. I'm gonna go back to the cheese map, because I'd like to share like some of the findings I think we had through this journey, and I also have the short film that Dr. Rolofson had that I would love to share with you as well. So I think, I don't know, Mansi, about you, but I think that through the process, we found that this is quite a gray area of cheese, in the sense of, I'm trying really hard, in sense of, like, what does it mean to be a cheesemaker in India, right? And we saw so many stories of triumph in reviving Indian cheese, in the Indian cheese movement. We saw so many stories of hardship, and we learned, I think, how cheese was used to conserve biodiversity, and how chefs were using it in different ways to discover their own roots. Um, and and I think that I'd like to like point out through this timeline, I think three main like observations or insights we had. One thing was especially to do with Indian cheese, was we virtually visited Samuel Johnson, who says he's reviving the mountain cheese movement, and we realized that this cheese called Kalimpong, there was actually no such thing as Kalimpong cheese anymore. And so it basically was a myth being circulated through repurposed news articles. But by virtually connecting um, with Samuel, we could understand what he was trying to do to revive the movement, and actually learn to make the original in quotes, but Kalimpong cheese that was being made 40 years ago by the Swiss by the Swiss mission, and trying to revive this culture of mountain cheese. Another thing that I think we talk about a lot is about Indian versus indigenous cheese. Like I think there is this long-standing debate of what do we call Indian cheese? Can we call a cheese made in a European style Indian? And I feel like even the so-called indigenous cheeses at some point of time, I guess, came from a foreign influence, right? And I think one of my favorite observations that we made was paneer, because we talked about so many other cheese so much, and I think there was one point through this map where we were like, we haven't spoken about paneer at all. Like we haven't started even mapping uh, 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 the communities that make paneer across India, and it's we actually kind of in our minds it was forgettable. It was on vegetarian menus. Like what was it, cheese or vegetable in English?
Oh my God, I totally remember that moment. We were like, wait, isn't paneer an Indian cheese as well? Why have we not mapped it? Oh my God, we're gonna go crazy because there's so many paneer makers in the country, of course. And you're right. Like it's considered a vegetable, which is so weird because it's just paneer in itself is a fantastic one. In fact, that's the most brilliant article I have read on paneer, by Adi.
Yes, yeah, there's again the link in the map. Yeah, we encourage everyone to read it. It's
100%.
an absolutely fascinating article about like the origin of the cheese, and how it differs, right? How you make it differs for exactly like any cheese from community to community.
Yeah.
And another, like, I think the last observation or that we kind of got so far from this timeline was coming back to Dr. Rolifson was tech for good. How cheese is being used in conservation, and how you it doesn't necessarily have to come from tradition is great, but I mean we can create new ones if it is meant to help communities, and cheese being used as a medium to sustain livelihoods. And I think that was for me really powerful in our learning journey, I think. I'm going to try and see if I can share this video that Dr. Olofsson said, and then I guess we can wrap up. 1 second. Is it visible? I don't know. Can you?
Yeah, it's
I
visible.
can see it. Yeah. Oh,
And is the sound on as well?
no.
Okay, sorry. Let me try again.
Oh my gosh, that looks amazing. Can see it, but we can't hear. But I guess we have the subtitles. We should definitely see the video.
और अच्छी जगह पे सारते हैं और उनको हमेशा ही वो छोटा होता है तब भी उनको अच्छी तरह से रखते हैं।
Ist das सब ठीक है? राजी खुशी? Traditionellem Wissen zufolge fressen die Tiere von 36 verschiedenen Pflanzen. Das sind fast alles Bäume, die auch in der Ayurveda benutzt werden. Und das ist natürlich ganz klar, dass sich dann, also wenn Kamele diese Heilpflanzen fressen, dass sich das dann auch in der Qualität der Milch niederschlägt. Das ist jetzt genau der Punkt, an dem wir ansetzen, weil es also global wird Kamelmilch also als Superfood gehandelt. Und es gibt sehr viele wissenschaftliche Veröffentlichungen, die auch belegen, dass Kamelmilch bei vielen Krankheitsbildern, vor allen Dingen Autoimmunkrankheiten, sehr gute Resultate erzeugen kann.
अभी फर्क क्या है, पहले तो हमारे ऊँटों को बेचते और मेले बिकते और दूसरे भी हर एक काम में ऊँट ज़्यादा बिकते तो हमारे वो घर गुजारा अच्छा सा चलता। और अभी ऊँट तो बक रहे नहीं तो अभी समय हमारा तो खराब ही। अभी ये भी 15 ऊँटों के लिए हम 100 घंटा इसके पीछे उबा हो तो है नहीं, तो बस यही खत्म होने की संभावना है। और फिर भी ये हमारे साथ है, इधर हमारे पास में LPPS का जब ये काम चल रहे नहीं तो फिर भी ये भी नहीं ज़्यादा खत्म हो जाए। और काम ऊँटे के बारे में है तो LPPS के ऊपर ही है। ये थोड़ा बहुत जो भी ऊँट रिया है LPPS ने पीछे ही रिया है हमारे यहाँ इलाका की बात। नहीं तो रहने वाला ही नहीं था। हम तो साफ परिस्थिति आपने खत्म ही हो चुके थे, सिर्फ 5 रखे थे। पहले LPPS ने दूध चालू किया और फिर बाद में धीरे धीरे 15-20 फिर भी रखा है।
Wir bemühen uns also jetzt hier in Indien dafür, das Bewusstsein zu entwickeln und haben deswegen auch diese Camel Dairy in die Welt gesetzt, die erste Kamelmolkerei in Indien. Und wir sehen also den lokalen Erfolg, dass die Familien, die in der Lage sind, uns ihre Kamelmilch zu verkaufen, denen geht es wirtschaftlich erheblich besser und die bemühen sich auch darum, ihre Herden wieder zu vergrößern.
अभी जो चल रहा है वो चीज तो अच्छी है, जो ऊँटों का ये जो मदद कर रहे हैं और वो दूध बिक रहे हैं तो वो तो अच्छा ही है। जो इसको कोई सरकार इसको ले सकती है, छोटी सी डेयरी, जब तो ऊँट रह सकते।
Wir zeigen, dass es möglich ist, also durch eine Entwicklung des Marktes für Kamelmilch, das Kamel in Rajasthan zu erhalten. Wir zeigen das hier auf der regionalen Ebene in unserem kleinen Umfeld. Aber um wirklich eine Wirkung zu haben, die ganz Rajasthan betrifft, muss sich der Markt für Kamelmilch ganz erheblich vergrößern. Und das versuchen wir, also mit aller Kraft, aber unsere finanziellen Mittel sind auch beschränkt eben.
That was just amazing.
That was lovely.
Magical. Really loved it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Olofsson, for sharing that with us. And on that note, I mean, it's just so wonderful to see the power of something like cheese, which has such a long-standing history, you know, come down to helping communities, being, I mean, such an interesting part of our lives through whether it's from culture, microbial cultures to our own cultures.
Oh, beautifully said. Beautifully said.
So thanks so much, Mansi. Thanks so much, Dr. Rolofsson. And thank you, the Kilter community, for having us today.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the Kilter community.
It wasn't that great, the quality of the, I think because of the internet connection, the movie, but it gives an idea. And as you were saying, it's so important what the animals eat, and that determines the quality of the cheese. And it is, I mean, these camels are eating on the 36 Ayurvedic plants, so that makes a big difference. And yeah. I learned a lot from your presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Same here. And I can't wait to try the cheeses. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Elizabeth, for organizing it.
Yes.
Okay. Bye then.
Bye. Bye.
Be in touch. Those cheeses were lovely that you were showing the photos. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Makes my mouth water.
We need to all meet and have a session like this in person. Post
physical, yes.
Yeah, physical, and all of us together should try all
with Mansi's cheese platters.
Yeah.
cheese and everything. Just as a community, just try it together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Post it. Yeah. Bye. Take care,
Bye.
all of you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Olofsson. Thank you, Mansi. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, participants, and thank you for the questions. The conversations will continue on Kilter, obviously. Please log in and please sign up for more sessions.